The state's limited power. So for instance, there is a specific provision of the constitution, which is article 31A or B, which goes on to say that for the purposes of uh, addressing mismanagement, for a temporary period, the state can take hold of a certain piece of property and then give it back once that particular piece of property is, or that particular mismanagement is rectified. This is regardless of whether it is otherwise state property. So for instance, let's assume there is a certain ashram, and this was an issue after, this had arisen after the demise of Satya Sai Baba in the south. Thousands of crores were supposed to be in the possession of the trust, of the Satya Sai Trust, all of which, for all practical purposes, is public money. Therefore, if the state had believed that there is a possibility of mismanagement of those funds, it could have taken charge of the administration of the trust for a certain period of time, rectified the problem, and it would have had to give it back. Be that as it may, the power has to go back to the trust. The administration must go back to the community. There is no concept either in constitutional law or outside the constitution which envisages or facilitates or allows the state to sit and stay put in the religious institution of a community for eternity. But this has been happening as far as the Hindu community is concerned. This is an issue which I think must find enough traction. It has not found enough traction. It's important for people to understand what kind of a bearing it has. There's one more aspect that I think we must address. And I'll draw an example from a recent litigation that we had fought before the Madras High Court. A common slur that is accused, or let's say that is hurled at Hindu religious institutions is, they discriminate devotees on the basis of the amount that they pay for a darshan. So if you're able to pay higher, you get special darshan. If you're not in a position to pay, then you get a common darshan. And this more or less generates a stereotype that Hindu religious institutions are largely money-minded and they're basically meant for the rich and not for the poor. If you're affluent, if you're well-heeled, and if you have the resources, you get special treatment as far as Hindu religious institutions are concerned. I'll give you one example of what has happened in the state of Tamil Nadu. So we run a group which basically pursues Indic legal causes, and as part of this we had visited a couple of temples only to realize that the system of a special queue based on the payment of an extra fee is an imposition by the HRC department of the state of Tamil Nadu without the permission of the trustees of the particular temple. So we had written, or we had filed an RTI application asking them as to where do you draw the power to impose this kind of a system as far as the temple is concerned. After all, if you're a state appointee, you need to show the source of power when it comes to the imposition of such a structure. The response comes to us saying there is no rule, there is no provision. This was done at the discretion of the commissioner of the HRC department. The decision is taken by the state, but the community and the institution is saddled with the stereotype that it is a money-minded institution. So we challenged this before the Madras High Court, and our fundamental question was, if he cannot trace the source of his power to impose this kind of a rule, then the rule must die. There is no reason for such an imposition to survive. We get more or less what I would call a consolation prize, where the Madras High Court went on to hold that all people, regardless of the money they pay or they don't pay, they shall have access to darshan from a common point, and it identifies the common point as far as the certain temple is concerned. But even then, the Madras High Court fails to address the central question as to, regardless of where people can stand and have darshan, what was the basis of the imposition of the rule by the state in the first place? That question has not been addressed. So we will be taking this up.